I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I know finishing off the first full day of the conference, I'm actually pretty flattered that you guys chose to end your day here with me. Hopefully I don't disappoint. Lower your expectations, that might help too. My name is Jason Harmer. I'm with Nationwide. We'll do formal introductions here in a little bit, but I'm really glad to be here at my third conference this year in Las Vegas. First time speaking. Do we have any first time conference attendees in the room? A bunch. All right. Don't take this the wrong way, but this is going to be your low point in the conference. Not to say that my material is bad per se. It might be. I haven't really had a lot of feedback. But that just shows you the content that we have here at the conference is just so valuable. And so you have your hands-on sessions, you have breakout sessions, you have the parties in the evenings as well. So this probably will be your low point. So if one of you can leave this room today saying that you learned something, I would take that as a win for myself. So let's go ahead and get started here. Just some of my information. We'll have a slide at the end with my contact information. If anybody has questions, I know we'll have a Q&A at the end. My stuff will last about 45 minutes, but I'll put this at the end as well. I'm more than happy to take questions via email, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to try and help out there as well. So just a quick look at today's agenda. We'll do some introductions so you can get to know who the heck I am. And the majority of today's session will be around two different use cases. The first use case that we'll talk about today is your typical business and IT relationship and how we use self-service analytics in that case. The second one is really more impactful of what I do on a day-to-day basis as a portfolio coordinator, how we're using self-service analytics to run the business of IT. And then finally, we'll just talk about some successes and lessons learned. So a little bit about me. Here's a picture of me and my buddies. I've been a report writer for Nationwide Insurance within IT for the past 8 years. I've been at Nationwide for about 10, all within IT. I think that's funny too when people ask me where I work. I say Nationwide. They say, oh, you must know a lot about insurance. I don't. I've been in IT. And then they say, oh, you must know a lot about computers. No, not really. I'm kind of in the reporting and analytics space. And then they get bored, and that's why I have no friends. So that's a little bit about me. I received my certified professional certificate last November. I don't know how I passed that, but we did. I also run two different user groups in the Des Moines area. One is for the citywide Des Moines Tableau user group. I run that with my colleague, Kim Martorano from Des Moines Public Schools. If you meet her at the conference, she is the absolute genius behind the user group, and that's open to anybody in the central Iowa area. And then I also run one specifically for the Des Moines campus for Nationwide. We have about 60 licensed users right now in Des Moines. We're headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, so we actually do have an enterprise one run by a few folks out of there, but it's sometimes difficult for us to learn things remotely via teleconference or a Skype session, so we actually do have one locally. I think you get a lot more out of it when you have somebody in the room that you can yell out if you don't understand anything. And I'm currently finishing up my business analytics program at Iowa State. So that's a little bit about me. Before we actually dive into the topics, I do want to just briefly run through kind of a good definition of what self-service analytics is. I think most of you might agree that in the reporting BI space, we have a lot of terminology used that gets used either incorrectly or they're interchangeable. So I'll give you just a quick 10-15 seconds to take a look at this definition of self-service analytics. It's from a small company called Gartner. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. But I bold-faced a few of the terms here. Enable and encourage the business side to generate their own reports on their own with nominal or minimal IT support. And I think that's really the core and the heart of what self-service analytics is really democratizing the data and giving people who are traditionally known as report writers or people who know how to run their custom SQL code to get their hands dirty with the data to help make those decisions. And a little bit about Nationwide IT. A lot of people who's not in IT in this room? Okay, so we have a pretty good number here. A lot of people think of IT as the people that you call on the help desk and then the people who come by to your desk when you have a computer issue. For large corporations like Nationwide, Nationwide IT is a huge family, a huge organization. The one I'm in is with what we call business service areas, or BSAs. We love our acronyms at Nationwide. And each one of these BSAs, we have about 20 of them, they support a specific business segment. So the one I'm in supports our commercial and ag business side. We have BSAs for claims, for personal lines, for HR, for finance. So we have a lot of different BSAs. The BSAs are primarily full of agile development lines. So if your business side has code changes or they need to make a pricing change in the mainframe system, those software development lines will go ahead and run that, do the development, do the testing, the requirements. And then we have what we call a portfolio team, which is what I'm on. And our main data goals have been around either financial planning and workforce management. So we want to make sure that as a portfolio team, we are identifying what work needs to be done in the future and making sure that we have enough capacity on our development lines to do that work. So the businesses at the beginning of the year and throughout the year do their cost plans. They want to make sure that they're budgeting 1.1 million or whatever the case may be. And we want to make sure that they're not going to, by the end of the year, be at 1.5 or they're going to be at like 0.9 million. So that's our main data goals from a portfolio coordinator perspective. The main tools and data sources that we use, I'm sure some of you guys might recognize these. Clarity, which is an IT project management tool, and then Quality Center for defects. Other things like ServiceNow for incident tickets and request tickets. But these are probably the primary tools and data sources that we have as portfolio coordinators. So that's a little bit of a background of what Nationwide IT portfolio is. So to get to our first use case here, it's about really talking about how IT is enabling and not preventing. So we have a nice little diagram that I drew, so don't judge, please. And we'll start on the left-hand side with the business. So typically, in an IT business relationship, you have the business side requesting a report, so we go to the top line over there. IT receives that report, and then we have a couple of bullets under IT. You know, typically, the IT folks that are maybe managing their data sources and their data warehouses, are they really report writers? That might not necessarily be the case in a lot of different enterprises. Do they truly understand the business needs? I think if you have a good IT organization, they should at least be familiar with some of the basic needs of the business, but typically, they might not be the experts at what the business need to do. And then, again, they're primarily governing data, but then also providing reporting. So IT gets that query. They go ahead and create and deliver that report. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 months, and sometimes it just goes into a black hole or an abyss. The business never receives it. So by the time, best case scenario, the business receives their report, but at that time, a couple of things happens on the business side. One, they're either receiving old data, so the queries that they had IT built in the report are not answering the questions that they need. They have new questions that have arisen since they put their report request in. And ultimately, the query that IT built was incorrect. So all of this really leads to essentially non-value add reports. So you get kind of stuck in this recursive loop of the business needing to make a decision whether or not do they go ahead and take that report as is and maybe not make the best decision, or do they wait and take 3, 4, 5 months, even more, to finally get the information that they need to drive the business. So that's been kind of our historical relationship. I've worked closely with the data warehouse team since they transitioned over to Tableau. They're not really in my BSA per se, but I really helped them out to get this rolling. So this is what the current model looks like. And unlike Tableau best practices, we will start on the right-hand side this time and go to the left. So IT, you can see that the loop really changes now just to a one-directional road. They are supplying governed data sources, and that's it. So IT governs the data. They create vetted data sources. I know if you're using one of the newer versions of Tableau Server, you can have certified data sources out there. Ultimately, what they're doing is, because they're providing vetted data sources, they're allowing the business to have flexibility and agility to customize their reports and do what they need to. And ultimately, what this means is that they're empowering the business to make their decisions and to do their own reporting. So on the left-hand side, from the business, they receive vetted data sources. They can do customized reporting. They can do data-driven insights or business-driven insights. And ultimately, they're going to be better informed to make better data-driven decisions. And when you think about it, it makes sense. The business analysts on the business side, they know the nuances, they know the intricacies of the data that IT might not inherently know. IT might just give them a dump of a flat file table that they pull from some SAS database or some SQL query. So it really makes sense to give that to the business, empower the business side to make those decisions. So that's kind of our current state, what we're looking at with this one particular data warehouse team. Talking to the folks on the business side, you can see that they're really running with Tableau desktop and server. They've got a lot more reports out there in their environment, and they're making better and quicker decisions because of it. So with that current state, I don't have a crystal ball by any means, but what does the future hold for Nationwide IT? We'll also take a look at this Magic Quadrant from that small company called Gartner. And Tableau is always in that leader quadrant, which is really awesome to see. But I just pulled a few statistics from their most recent Magic Quadrant that they had, and I think these really just indicate and really highlight how big self-service analytics is going to be. 90% of modern BI platforms are going to have natural language generation or AI. 50% will have natural language processing. I think if you guys went to the keynote today, you heard some of that as well. And then you'll have double the business value. So a lot of this, natural language generation, natural language querying, that really means taking it away from people who you think are typical IT nerds or doing the custom SQL querying and knowing how to do programming or coding, and getting that into the hands of people who might not necessarily have that background, and really driving self-service analytics. So I think that's where by 2020, we'll see a huge push for self-service analytics if your company isn't already doing that. So that's the first use case that we have. And again, that one I just sort of helped consult our data warehouse team. The next one I have here is really near and dear to my heart because I've been involved with this ever since being a portfolio coordinator about almost 3 years now, actually. So when people first ask me, when I joined this role as a portfolio coordinator in August of 2014, a lot of our leaders and a lot of my managers asked, like, why use Tableau? So a lot of their reports were in Excel, and it was really hard for us to sell Tableau. So I think of 3 reasons why we want to use Tableau. And I'll walk you through these reasons why we want to use not only self-service analytics, but self-service visual analytics. The first thing I can think of is that Tableau is quick. So we have a quick example up here. Just a simple bar chart. We have region and sales by year. And we have just a simple reference line. So the average line that's being calculated on the far left is the entire table. We can change that by doing per pane. So if we want to look at the average by region by year, and then per cell. And to do these all in Tableau is just a simple couple of clicks. To do something like this in Excel, you're probably having to manually recalculate each one of those average lines based on the dimension that you want. Do we want to do it across the table, across the pane, or across the cell? So doing things like this, doing things like control charts, that you have another reference line, an average line, you have an upper and lower control limit. And the nice thing about Tableau is if you filter this data, a lot of people have interactive dashboards with filter boxes probably. Anybody? A few people? When you change those filter boxes or when you interact with the dashboard, all of these lines automatically change. There's no need to recalculate what those average lines will be. So when you're doing, as a report writer, adding these reference lines is super quick. When you want to connect the data, it's quick. When you're publishing your reports up to the server, it's quick. So you're saving a lot of time. And when you think about Tableau's competitors, I would say 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 probably have the same basic feature set. They all can do bar graphs, they all can do line graphs. But I would say 9 out of 10 times, Tableau is going to do it quicker. And to make sure that you can do that as a report writer, to do these things quicker and easier, is going to save you time. So you're spending less time doing the data prep and doing the viz building, and you can spend more time actually doing the analytics, getting the information out of that. So that's one of the first reasons I think of why we want to use a visual analytics tool like Tableau. The second reason is that it's scalable. Who here has seen this error message in Excel? I've seen it too many times in my life. If you can't see it, it's because Microsoft Excel has stopped working, and I won't even get to the fine print because it doesn't matter. So in a previous role at Nationwide, I was on the analytics and reporting team for our help desk. So we had call center data, essentially. And just like any other organization that's looking at historical data, you're looking at 13-month historical data because you want to see those trends. So we had this all in Excel. This is early 2010. And our Excel file looked like this. The first tab had your data dump from business objects. You might have some calculated columns on the right-hand side. You have another table for pivot tables and charts and graphs and everything like that. That file for us ballooned to over 115 megabytes in size. For an Excel file, that's pretty big. And anytime, this is a report that was updated monthly, and every time we went in there to make those changes, we had to cross our fingers, because if you were working in there for 10, 20 minutes and you weren't hitting F5 as fast as you could every 3 seconds, you might see this, and you're losing work because of it. And when I say scalable, Tableau is scalable because regardless of your data sets are 5 rows or 5 million rows, Tableau is going to be able to work with that data efficiently. So as we transitioned, I was on this analytics and reporting team. We're one of the teams to help pilot Tableau. So we transitioned all of our reports. We still had to do a data dump from business objects to get to the flat file. But then we connected Tableau to these Excel files, got all of our graphs, got all of our charts set up. That file size was like 12 megabytes. And we never had to worry about Tableau failing out on us or crashing without us having to save every 5 seconds. So again, a lot of the data that I've worked with historically at Nationwide, I wouldn't consider it big data by any means, but it's nice to see that you can take data sets and not having to worry about that regardless of how big the data set is. So that's my second reason I like to use visual analytics tools like Tableau. The third reason here, and this will be the most exciting PowerPoint slide that you've ever seen, is that it's visual. Probably the least visual slide you'll ever see. And the reason I've done this, the next few slides, I really want to talk about, an evolution of one of our reports from an IT portfolio perspective. But, at its core, when you think of Tableau, and we heard some really cool things at the keynote this morning, but at its core, it's a data visualization program. Understanding how easier it is for consumers to interact with the data, to make decisions based on a visualization of the data, rather than looking at some sort of like cross-tab visualization in Excel. So with that in mind, I'll run through here a nice evolution of one of our main reports. So one of our main reports from an IT portfolio perspective is capacity demand. Like we were talking about earlier, we want to make sure that for all of our agile development lines, they are planning accordingly. And if we see anybody who's overbooked or underbooked in a given month, that we can reach out to their scrum masters, their iteration managers, and see what's going on. So when I joined the team in August of 2014, and I inherited a lovely report, and it looked like this. And this is probably pretty typical. I'm sure a lot of people have done something like this or have consumed information like this in Excel. So we would build this report. It was very manual. I think the only thing that was automated was the color formatting. I mean, at its core, this does its job. It provides the information that we need to see. So on the left-hand column, we have our agile development lines. In the month columns, we have a number. And again, capacity minus demand. So if you take the allocation hours that you're available minus the allocation hours that you're demanded against, ideally that should be as close to 0 as possible. So the items in yellow show that the team is underbooked and the red are overbooked. So it does its job, but if you're a scrum master for the Mighty Minions Gone Awry, which is a great name, you have to go on the 5th or maybe 6th line down, a particular month I have to go over. It takes a long time for people to consume this information. So this is what I inherited. So as we transitioned to Tableau in early 2015, we transitioned to this. And this looks very similar, but this was done very purposefully. I used what I called the lift and shift approach. So we wanted to essentially lift the visualization that we had in Excel that was uploaded to SharePoint for people to use, and now they're using Tableau Server to interact with the data. I didn't want to overwhelm our project managers, our resource managers, iteration managers doing this. It's a whole new process for them to consume the data. So when we first used Tableau Server, I wanted it to look visually similar to what they had before. And what this did is it helped give me an error message on this laptop. It helped get buy-in from our data stakeholders. If we didn't want to overwhelm people and said, oh, Tableau Server is too difficult, I don't like it, I want to go back to SharePoint, and then really lose out on using Tableau. So this helped get that buy-in. It was very kind of a nice ease transition, this lift and shift approach. But again, very similar format, cross-tab visualization. Your agile teams are on the left. Your capacity demand information is in the columns by month. So what does our report look like now? And I'm going to try to share via an interactive workbook. So if you guys go out to the TC Live to download any of the slides, The slides that I'm skipping right now actually are just screenshots of what we're seeing now, so you still have that information. Just wasn't able to. Is this? All right. And go duplicate. Okay. All right. So this is what our report looks like now. I'll get into, anybody know this presentation mode, which is really nice. So this is what our visualization looks like now. And you can see we have a nice little colorful heat map style visualization at the top. So now our Scrum Masters, our iteration managers can easily see at a glance where their team might be struggling with their planning. So we have, if you think about capacity minus demand, that should be 0, so the box will be very small. So if you see a very large box, that's a big issue for you. And then the color indicates whether or not you're underbooked, which is in orange, or overbooked, which is in blue. So at a glance, Scrum Masters can easily see what's going on. And then we also have this wave chart on the right-hand side. The black line represents their capacity, and the wave chart underneath represents the type of demand. So the color of the wave chart represents whether the demand is hard booked, soft new, what stage of the demand process are they in. So again, if you think of newspaper lingo, newspaper terminology, if you think above the fold, that's really just going to give you your summarized information. And I know a lot of people, they want to see the numbers. And I want, that's okay. I know a lot of people still want to see the details behind it or what's driving behind here. So if they click on a team name up here, everything else filters on the dashboard. So you can easily see just for this particular team, the Frito Banditos, what their capacity is, so who's on their team, how many hours are they available, what projects are they allocated to down here at the bottom. And you can see here we have an issue. They haven't really booked themselves out past the end of the year. And if you want to go back, you can just click on their name. So this, having a visualization like this really, as we transition to this style of visualization, we have monthly meetings with our project managers and with our Scrum Masters. Those meetings used to be 3 hours long total, talking to different asset application owners. And now we can get done in about an hour and a half for all of our application owners. Because this style of visualization really helps us out. It's so much quicker to use and consume the information. And something that I do, again, for better or for worse, I have no idea. I typically try to keep this consistent format with my visualization. So regardless if you're looking at this report, and we'll take a look at a few others, I try to keep a consistent format. So if there's any filter boxes, I'll put them on the left. You can see here that we have all of our 18 or so BSAs listed here. So if we went back to that Excel file, when I first joined the team, that CDR report was specifically for my BSA. But again, with the scalability of Tableau, I built this report across the enterprise. Any of the portfolio teams across our 20 or so BSAs can use this report. So now we built a report that's not only available to more people, this is automatically updated every morning. So we go from a report that was weekly, that took me about 3 hours to build every week in Excel, is now available to more people. It's automated to refresh every day, and people can go out there to server whenever they want to. Huge win for us. So now I'll just walk you guys through a couple more examples of some of my amazing dashboards. They're not amazing. The next one here is an out-of-office report. So anybody who uses Clarity will understand that you actually have a calendar of when you're available within the tool, which sounds a little redundant if you have like any other HR system to manage time off. But what that does is if you put time off in Clarity, that will lower your availability for that month, which means if you don't take those hours off in a given month, it looks like you're available to work. So typically, any full-time associate is working 160 hours a month. Typically, people take off a few days, a few weeks, November, December for holidays. But if you don't indicate that in your calendar, it's going to say you're available for 160 hours. You're going to be allocated to your projects for 160 hours. The cost for that project will be artificially high because you didn't indicate that time off in your calendar. So again, we actually have a number chart here, just color-coded, that lets us easily see, and I've got it filtered to my specific BSA, who might not be taking hours off. And you can see here, because my BSA has been using Tableau for the past 2.5 years, we're doing a pretty good job. We only have a few outliers of people showing up red will indicate that they didn't put any hours off in their calendars. And let me just switch this really quick to another group, a group that doesn't use Tableau. Well, they got a lot more red than we do, I think. So you can see this, again, when we talk about the main data goals from a portfolio perspective, one of them was financial management, and this is huge. It really is, because as we do our monthly cost plans, we do not want to artificially increase the number of hours that it's going to take us to do work, and thus increase the budget for our business side. So it's just a very simple visualization, but it really got us involved to make sure that we can go out there, we can filter any of this information. If I'm a particular resource manager, I want to look at my team, I can go ahead and do that. If I'm Bridget, that's probably not the best name to choose, but Bridget's team's looking pretty good. If I'm a project manager, I don't want to know who's working on my projects. I can do that too. So there are a lot of different ways to slice and dice this data, but it does give some great insight from a financial management perspective. The next report here is really not actually a dashboard per se, but it's a dashboard that I built. Let me get back into presentation mode. This is a dashboard that I built as simply as acting as a gateway or a portal to all of our reports in production. So any of these reports that are in blue are available, like we said, because of Tableau scalability. These are available across the enterprise. Anybody from MyBSA to claims to personal lines to soft SDS, they can use these reports. And you have the name of the report. You can click on this arrow to open it up. You have the cadence, how frequently it's updated, what the data source is, and a nice short description of what the report is. And then, because we've recently switched how we utilize Tableau Server, we had a few different portfolio teams with their own Tableau Server site, since we have an enterprise license at Nationwide. It didn't make any sense because we're all looking at the same data. We all have the same reports. We're all looking at financial management, workforce planning. It didn't make sense for us to have multiple sites. If I'm a VP or a senior vice president and I want to look at multiple reports, which site do I go to? And then those different reports could be using different data sources. So we've sort of consolidated. We only have one Tableau Server site now from an IT portfolio perspective, but we wanted to still empower different BSAs to do their own if they have any ad hoc analysis. So we actually do have folders down below that act as links to their specific project folder on the server site. So they're still empowered if they have any of their own ad hoc analysis. But now we have one URL to provide people instead of having all of our resource managers and project managers having to save like 18 different bookmarks. And then if somebody updates the name of the report, they republish, that bookmark is dead. But they know that this one link that will not change because I won't allow it, will provide them the most up-to-date information and still give them access to maybe a particular ad hoc report for a BSA. So it's just, again, a simple way to utilize Tableau. Because we have the self-service capabilities, I'm building these reports. We used to have another team within IT that built our reports. Having them doing something like this would be near impossible. And if they could, it'll probably take them like 3 months. But for better or for worse, I put my contact information there. Don't do that. You'll get questions. You'll get questions and you don't want to answer them. The next report here, this is probably one of my favorite visualizations. It's just a simple line graph, but I think it's quintessentially what Tableau stands for in terms of data visualization. So this is a simple line chart here of the number of defects. Now, we could have just left it as number of defects and left it as that. And if we did, we might see this 14 here on the far right-hand side. We might say, oh, we had 14 defects. That's an issue. And we look at the previous months, oh, we only had 5 or 10, but that 14 really stood out. But we added 2 modifications to this line chart, so we're essentially getting 3 graphs for the price of 1. So the color of the line actually represents the number of policies or the number of customers impacted, as I'm creaking up here. And the width of the line represents financial impact. How many dollars were impacted with this defect? And now because of that, in one visualization, we can clearly see that this 14, was a high number of just nominal defects, but this 5 here, something huge happened here. We had a huge financial impact and a huge customer impact. Same with this 10 over here. So now we can engage conversations with our business side to say, all right, we had 14 defects, but let's not worry about that. What happened here? It was a release defect issue. Somebody put some bad code into a release and it had a huge impact. And because everybody loves to see row-level information, we made this interactive as possible. So if I wanted to see these 5 defects in particular, I can click on this data point, and the bottom table shows the individual defect number. So we can isolate what was going on. And you can see it was that one particular defect. It wasn't spread out across multiple defects. It was one pretty major defect that IT screwed up on. So again, I think this type of visualization, even if you don't have the detail at the bottom, the line chart here really represents, I think, what Tableau is known for and what Tableau is good at, and that's communicating information with visualization. This is just like a journey of what I've done in the past year. This is fun. The next report here, just a simple, another line chart here, but it's more of a control chart type visualization. I know we talked about that earlier. Oh, great. Please work. So we have our average line. We have our upper and lower control limits. In this case, we just kept it with 3 standard deviations away. But each of the points is colored, so we can identify where we might be trending up or down and for how many months. Which, again, we probably don't need the colors, but it makes it easier for us to see those trends. So the green will represent at least a 2-month decreasing trend. And this is a control chart looking at defects. I need to step back. That are only, if you think of severity levels for defects, you have low, medium, high, and critical. High and criticals are the big ones that we want to avoid. So this is just filtered on critical and high defects. So we see a 2-month decreasing trend from December to February, which is really good. And then the yellow represents at least a 2-month increasing trend. So we go from 1 in February, 4 in March, that's one month increase. And then we go from 4 to 7, which is 2 months, that indicates as yellow. Then anything 3 or more shows up as red. So we can see that we had sort of a tough year with critical and high defects earlier this year from April to June, but we've kind of come back down recently. Again, just a simple control chart. We have some filters here, and again, if we wanted to filter on a particular application suite or app owner, a different BSA, we can do that and see all this information dynamically change. Let's go, let's choose everybody here. We're doing pretty terrible as a company. I shouldn't have done that. But again, you can see because of the power of Tableau, because of the scalability, this is, again, not just for my BSA, this is for all of essentially PNC BSAs. And we have the great ability to do these reference lines. The speed to build this type of visualization is quick. And now we have these colored dots that represent that can dynamically change. We have reference lines that can dynamically change. So it really hits home. So regardless of what BSA you're in, this graph will be somewhat meaningful to you. All right, so that's just kind of a stroll through memory lane for me. Hopefully you guys found some information there. Again, once the PowerPoint is live, I think in the next day or so, the PowerPoint will just have screenshots of just what I went over, so you can take a look at that. We just had some confidential information we didn't want to share. So with that said, we'll talk about some successes and lessons learned. When we think about successes, obviously it's no secret that Tableau, it's an investment. It's not cheap for organizations to go ahead and deploy 50 different desktop licenses and deploy an enterprise-wide server environment. So when we deployed this back in late 2014, my leadership was very clear to understand what was our return on investment and what successes can we have. So some of the successes, when we think of a return on investment, the first one is more of an intangible return on investment, but Tableau allowed us to have better metrics, and ultimately what that means is we were able to make better decisions because of it. So when you think about how, through all the different examples that I had, if we filtered on my specific BSA, we were looking extremely good. We were planning properly. Our lines knew what work that they had, who was available to do it. So when our commercial and ag business side is budgeting for the rest of the year, they know that number is going to be accurate because we are planning properly. So we can make better decisions because of it compared to teams that aren't using Tableau to consume their information. And from an actual numbers perspective, the efficiency gains that we saw, so we measured all of 2015, what type of efficiency gains do we have? And we measured to have roughly 800 annual resources hours saved that first year, which seemed, it's okay. I wanted to maybe hit an even 1,000. But this is just, we actually calculated this specifically on current reports. So again, our current reports in Excel were just for ICA, they were just updated weekly. So this doesn't really account for they're open to everybody, and now they're updated daily automatically. So that number probably would have increased by 5 if we take out current scope of the reports currently and the reports back then assumed if they were available across the enterprise. At least 5 times, probably more. Another success, we have increased visibility. I put that pun in there purposefully. And what I mean by that is we have more visibility around our data. So when it's interesting to see anybody who's deployed Tableau Server in particular, to see your leadership grasp the idea of data and they want more of it. So we understand what fields are available in our systems and Clarity and Quality Center, and they want more of it. They can see the power of making data-driven decisions, and that just opens the floodgates in terms of what they want to see. They want more reports. They want bigger reports. They want it updated. Everybody wants it real time, which I have to tell them we can't do. But it gives us more visibility, not only from a data perspective that we want to see more data, but then also when we compare my BSA to our peers across the company, that our BSA stands out because we're making better decisions with data. Having self-service analytics tools like Tableau, we talked about this earlier, we're more agile, we can customize our reports. We don't have another IT organization or another reporting team to be as a bottleneck in terms of making changes quickly and efficiently, and we can really customize our reports to be exactly what we want in a matter of, honestly, in a matter of hours versus a matter of months. And again, the lift and shift approach, that's a success, I guess. It worked really well for us. I'll be interested to hear from any of you after this to see what kind of transitions that you guys had from using tools like Excel to Tableau. But I thought using that lift and shift approach really worked for us. It really helped us get the buy-in using Tableau. Some lessons learned. I'm sure if other people are using self-service analytics tools, they'll have some of these same lessons learned as well. Self-service means more users getting their hands on the data. And we really need to have, a lot of people talk about data governance. I like to use a term called reporting governance or reporting framework, because when you have so many hands onto the data and they're publishing their information to the server, it looks pretty messy. I think the VP from Honeywell talked about this earlier in the keynote today. And it does, unfortunately for us right now, it could have looked like the Wild Wild West, but having that reporting governance or reporting framework early really identifies who can publish to server, what project folders are they publishing to, what kind of audit system that you want to have. So looking at reports that aren't used or need to be corrected, having some sort of design guideline aspect of it as well, really will help out, because the minute you have 20 cooks in the kitchen, then things can get hairy pretty quickly if you don't have some sort of framework or governance around your reporting. Dashboard acumen, I think this goes kind of under the radar, especially at a conference like Tableau. So if you guys don't mind, I'll be on my soapbox here for about 5 minutes. Thinking about pre-designed questions, information discrimination, not all information is the same. Thinking about dashboard design is really important. I think a lot of people who start to use Tableau, they talk to their leaders or con their leaders into getting Tableau, and they're worried about just how to use the tool. How do I work with parameters? How do I do dashboard actions? How do I do a dual axis graph? They forget to think about how are they displaying that in their dashboards. So ultimately, they've got this new tool, they're building a dashboard, then they present it to their leaders, and their leaders go, I can't make a decision because why are we going to use Tableau? And that's a huge issue. To think about how are we displaying the data, if you guys are familiar with Tufte or Stephen Few, thinking about dashboard design, those are critical elements using Tableau, because a lot of people are just worried about how to use Tableau, not really worried about dashboard design. So that's something that we really want to, as we consolidate how we're doing reporting from an IT portfolio perspective, we really want to make sure that we are displaying the information the best way possible. The last lesson learned here, using IT as a training tool. In the earlier example, the first use case, our IT data warehouse team is really more of a data supplier. So when our commercial and ag, I can't remember the BSA, the business side that were using it, when they first had Tableau questions, where did they go? They went to that data warehouse team. they don't know Tableau from a report writer perspective. They know how to do some joins in Tableau. So communicating, if you do have that traditional business and IT relationship, communicating with the business that the data suppliers might not be the best Tableau trainers. So they have questions on how do I do a dual access graph? How do I change formats? How do I do conditional formatting in Tableau? Making sure that the business understands where to go for training. It might not be the same team that supplies their data. So with that said, we're about at 40 minutes. That's all I have. So thank you guys again so much. Really quickly, some housekeeping items. I'll leave the screen up here. We do have the TC17 app, so you can leave feedback. So please be nice. I would really appreciate it. No, if you do have any feedback, leave it on the app. Come talk to me. I've given this style of presentation a few times. I always love to hear what worked, what didn't, what really resonated with you, because I think, again, today's talk wasn't really technical. It was just more socializing what I've done and what Nationwide has done with Tableau. So I'd always love to hear feedback from you guys. So use the app to do that. Feel free to reach out to me on my email or Twitter or my LinkedIn account. So I guess at this time, we will open up to questions, and Kim has a microphone, so if you guys want to raise your hand. And thank you. Questions?
Thank you. So you talked briefly about the switch from the historical model to the self-service BI. I think my organization and probably a lot of others are going through that transition. What are some of the key pain points that you experienced during that transition, and how did you address those?
The business and IT model. The biggest pain points that we saw was probably the training tool. I think a lot of our business side just immediately went to their IT data warehouse team to get training, which they know some things in Tableau, but not a whole lot. So that was a huge pain point. And I think from the business perspective, they did a great job working on reporting governance. And without that, it could have looked really ugly because they were exponentially getting more desktop license users. So without that, it could have been, you would have had 5 reports of the same information, all connected to different data sources. So having that reporting framework to start with, because unfortunately in my area, we didn't do that. So we're kind of trying to rein in everything right now from an IT portfolio perspective, but the commercial analytics teams have just done a beautiful job because they had that framework in mind. So that was probably the biggest issue for them, but they took care of it really quickly. Come on, over here. Oh.
What is Nationwide doing to vet or to certify data sources? How far along is that process?
Speaking with my data that I use, unfortunately, Nationwide is not the quickest in terms of updating their server environment. So we don't have 10.3 installed yet to have certified data sources. But what we're going to do is, there's a lot of different ways to connect to IT project management data. We can pull flat files from business objects. We can connect to an Oracle data mart that we just recently built up. But ultimately, I think what we're going to do is utilize Tableau Data Server. So publish, connect to those data sources in desktop, do the joins, do the calculated fields, publish them up to the server for others to use across the IT portfolio space. And we've actually indicated one of the project folders on our server site is enterprise data sources. And it's locked down right now. I think only I can publish to that. It's empty right now. We haven't done anything with it yet. But ultimately, it's going to be very governed who publishes data to that particular folder. And then we also have an enterprise report project folder. So when people are connecting to data and they're publishing out to the server, that report will be locked down as well because we want to make sure that we have the same consistent design guidelines information there. But ultimately, until we get 10.3, with certified data sources, it's really going to be up to us to identify who has access to publish those data sources, and ultimately using Tableau Server to help us identify governed, vetted data sources.
Did you need to hire any additional staff to handle support and training for the new Tableau users?
I wish we did, because it was basically me. Unfortunately, and I think a lot of organizations, I think the term expense management is probably big, so we didn't have the capacity to add additional FTEs, or even like shift bodies within Nationwide. Fortunately, my leadership, my direct boss and my VP have been more than happy to help socialize what we're doing and use me as a training tool. So whether it's something directly related to my job or if it's running the Nationwide Des Moines user group, they've given me the leeway to do that. But I think even if we didn't, because we didn't have access to hire anybody outside, it's really just a grassroots effort. I mean, if you have people who are dedicated to data and using Tableau, having them just speak up and socialize what they're doing, socializing training options. That's what we've done, and unfortunately, it's just been me within the portfolio space. But if you have others in your company, I think that would be a huge one. It's really fun to see, and it might be even a little cliche, how far that can go when you have just a strong grassroots effort to help training.
How have you, I know you guys publish a lot of your data sources for your users, for some of your desktop analysts. How do you handle the ones that just want to take care of it from their own and publish like embedded data sources to the server and manage their own little world as far as their workbooks are concerned? Have you guys come across that too much?
Yeah, in my area, we don't really have to deal with that right now, but in that first use case, that is very much the case where our data warehouse team is providing governed data sources to the server, but they still have access to connect to their SQL servers and connect to data. And again, I think it's that reporting framework. I don't know the details, unfortunately. If you guys meet Louise Price, who's not in this room, she's here at the conference. She was a strong component in that. I think they might have different folders on servers. So if they're using a governed data source, they can publish to that one. If they're doing something more ad hoc and using their own data source, it goes into another folder, or maybe even stays in the test environment.
So I'm curious, have you considered QA around peer review before things get published to senior VPs, and what kind of process do you have there with 70 desktop people on the wild?
The 60 or 70 that we have in Des Moines are across business units, so they're not in the same teams. From an IT portfolio perspective, we've started for about a year now. It's been primarily training right now, but anybody in the IT portfolio space that has a desktop license, we meet monthly. We're in different locations: Columbus, Des Moines, Scottsdale, Arizona. Right now, it's been more about training. I think a lot of the new users, the users that we have are very new, but eventually, when they're starting to publish information and we start to really formalize the process of having an enterprise data or reporting folder that people can publish out to, it will be extremely vetted in terms of, and using that monthly meeting to say, hey, you've done a report, let's take a look at it. What data sources are you using? What designs are you using? And then ultimately, if we, checks all the boxes, then we'll say, all right, publish to the certified folder. But that's all we're doing is really just, I've set up monthly meetings with everybody, and that's what we'll use to govern what we're publishing out there. Put it in Quality Center? No. I hope not. That's a lot of red tape.
Hey, so I was given a PowerPoint slide a few months ago basically told, hey, make a dashboard that looks like this. And a few months later, I was told, oh, put some hours on it. And I have to start on the second thing, but there's a big gap between the business people and the people that manage the Clarity system. And how did you figure out what to get out of Clarity? That's what
I was fortunate to inherit that report initially, so we knew that the data was pretty much there. So that was a great building block for me personally. But it's funny to see that all the fields within Clarity, some of them were never pulled into a data set, and some of them people don't even know about. They weren't even governed in the system. And we said, hey, this will actually be really useful. And it's been to get people on board to either manage the information in Clarity or to use it in a report has been just socializing it. I think most of my peers and my boss's peers across the company probably get pretty sick and tired of emails from me. But I think communication is key in that aspect to make sure that we are using the fields. But because we had the leeway to use Tableau, and because I had enough capacity, I just said, let me see the fields. What what other fields are out there. And some of them didn't stick, and we stopped using them, and we pulled them out of the query. Some of them were like, yeah, this is really a useful way to look at it, and so we kept on those fields. So it was really just, I wouldn't say trial and error, but it was just more exploration to see what fields that we need to use from Clarity.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And this is tagging on to this gentleman's question about certified data sources.
Yeah.
So do you then display on your dashboard something which is not certified? I mean, is there a logo or something which distinguishes this is certified content, this is uncertified?
That's a great question, and that's probably something that I'll want to look into. Thank you for that. Right now, we haven't formalized that process yet, so we don't have certified in the IT portfolio space. Once we do, I think that would be a great option, actually. So if we go back to some of my dashboards, you guys probably would actually just go to these screenshots here. Come on. You can see here I've got like this little help icon in the top right. If people hover over that, it gives them a nice information of like how to interact with the dashboard. And then you see in the top left-hand corner the last date it was refreshed. I think we could easily add something like this use certified data sources. I think that would be a great way to not only help the report writers keep in check, but then also socialize that so any end user consuming this report understands, hey, I can trust this because this is using a data source that's been vetted. I think that's a great option. All right, thanks everyone.